So that brings us to the end of this module on advanced SAS features. In this module, we started off looking at some of the mathematical calculations that we can perform in our SAS file, such as multiplication, subtraction, and division. And if we're using the division operator without any variables as part of the division, we have to tell SAS to perform a division explicitly by surrounding the calculation in parentheses. We learned that when we're using nested rules, we can get at the parent of the nested rules by using the ampersand symbol. So for example, using this to create the hover pseudo class, and additionally how we can use it to target specific cases, such as when the body element has a logged-in class applied. We learned how we can create lists of values in SAS by either creating space delimited lists or comma delimited lists, and how we can use some of the functions associated with the lists, such as length to get the number of elements in the list, or nth to get a value at the specified index in the list. Next, we learned about the content directive and how we can use it to pass content to mixins, and also how we can combine it with a mixin that takes an argument for a breakpoint that targets a specific browser width using a media query. We learned about how to indicate to SAS that we want to allow our mixin to take a variable number of mixin arguments by applying 3 periods after the parameter name. Next, we learned about the color functions in SAS and how, for example, we can define a root color and generate a whole theme from this one color using some of the color functions, such as lighten to make the color lighter, adjust hue to change the actual hue of the color, and also saturate to increase the saturation of the color value. We learned how to use the if and else directives to perform conditional logic. So for example, how inside a mixin, we can ensure that a parameter value is always greater than a minimum value. We learned about the different types of loops in SAS, so the index-based for loop, where we can create a loop variable that increments through values 1 to 5, and also how we can use the each loop to iterate through a list of values, for example, a list of colors. Next, we saw how to prevent SAS from generating selectors when we're using inheritance by replacing either the class or ID selector with a percent mark, and how when we reference this using extend, we also replace the percent mark. And finally, we looked at nested properties and how this is a shorthand for creating groups of namespaced properties. So for example, this could include the font namespace, such as font family, font size, font weight, and font style. Join me in the next module when we'll be looking at some specific implementations of using SAS in ASP.NET applications.